Uh, Jeff, let's get to it. One of our favorites, bringing him on, writer for Anscape, which is, Jesse, not how I have introduced you before. So, Jesse Washington, tell me what's going on with your life right now, man.
Yeah, man, we making the big move. Formerly known as the Undefeated, and now our new name is Andscape. And the change was made because Disney and ESPN are putting a lot of resources into expanding our platform and our brand, and we did not hold the rights to use the Undefeated in certain areas where they feel they can make money. So now we got an Andscape, and the name comes from the fact that it's black and everything. So there you go,
Which
new
is
name.
which is what you
Sometimes I
guys.
feel like this whole Andscape thing, when somebody texts you from a number that you don't recognize, and you're like, new name, who this? New phone, who this? Whatever the kids say. So yeah, I'm a little bit disoriented with the whole Andscape thing, but you know what? It's still Jesse Washington's byline. So what can I say?
And hopefully the paychecks are still coming to the right address. That's
First and the
really all that matters,
15th,
right?
baby. First and the 15th. Yes, sir.
And the content is still out of this world in terms of the things you guys are writing about. So, whatever you call yourself, the content is spot on. That's where it's at, right, Jesse?
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Thank you.
How fulfilling is it for you to be writing for that kind of publication where you're not just dealing with the X's and O's and talking about tomorrow's game, and you're actually talking about issues that are near and dear to your heart with people that are near and dear to your heart?
Man, Jeff, I appreciate that question because it feels like the fulfillment of all the hard work that I put in over the years. I started young in this business, and so I got 30 plus years of a lot of different jobs, all of which I appreciated and learned from. But to be able to use all that to do something that feels meaningful. When they first asked to hire me, I said, this sounds nice and everything, but I don't want to just go and write about sports. And they were like, no, it's about more than sports. It's about all that other good stuff. And so that's why I came over. That's what we're doing. And it is the most rewarding work I've done in my career.
Well, I know I enjoy reading it, and we enjoy getting to talk to you about it. And, we've had you on a lot to talk about the intersection of race and sports. We like to kind of really get into the issues and talk about it. And so we've seen a lot of different headlines lately that we want to kind of recap with you. We wanted to start with Brian Flores. I'm going to start by saying I still don't understand how he's fired. Man won 8 games in a row. I get how you started the season, but I mean, you talk about a leader of men. That's who he seems like he is. And I don't know if the NFL picked the wrong person to mess with, but you tell me, it looks like Brian Flores has receipts, whether it's copies of NDAs or text messages. Can you explain to me how Brian Flores has the potential to change the way that coaches are hired in the NFL?
Oh, man. Yeah. There was a Wu-Tang song called which profanely paraphrased "You're a wrong person to mess with." Uh, uh, Title right there. But that's who Brian Flores is right now. I do think he has the potential to absolutely change the way business is done in the NFL because he's exposing the hypocrisies and the barriers and the structural racism that remains. And like you said, he has receipts, you know, and so I think that finally, this could all result in Black coaches being more than just afterthoughts or having uh, competing on a level playing field for jobs. You know, it's not that these non-Black coaches don't deserve the jobs they get. It's just that Black coaches with similar qualifications, it's not enough for the Black coach. The Black coach has to be Superman, whereas a lot of the other coaches hired, as some of my colleagues have demonstrated over at ESPN, it's a lot of it is through who your dad is. There's a disproportionate amount of NFL head coaches and high-ranking coordinators and stuff whose fathers were in the league and who head coached and stuff like that. So the fact that Brian Flores did not sign the non-disclosure agreement, turned down the millions of dollars that he could have collected from the Dolphins in order to do what is right, I think is going to change the league. And then shout to the Pittsburgh Steelers in my adopted hometown for hiring this man. We all thought that he would never coach again, but he's still in the league. They're going to have to see him on Sunday on the sidelines. I love it.
Yeah, but isn't that part of the problem? We have the Steelers and the Rooney family that seems to be out being progressive while the rest of the league is a bunch of people that don't understand that. I mean, it's really just one or two owners, and these owners have been around forever, and it doesn't really change. I mean, Mike Tomlin is a Hall of Fame football coach. If he wasn't a Hall of Fame football coach coaching for Rooney, would he have the same opportunities to have survived this long that other coaches who aren't black would have?
Yeah, he wouldn't. He wouldn't. The Denver Broncos are up for sale right now, and there is a black man who is bidding to be the majority owner of that franchise. That could be a huge change. If the allegations in Flores' lawsuit, I can't.
Doing well after that rebranding over there.
That's right. We just got the exclusive
going in. Me and Diddy. Diddy tried to buy the Carolina Panthers when they took that squad from Jerry Richardson. They might if the Mr. Ross, the owner of the Dolphins, Stephen Ross, if he actually tried to pay Brian Flores to lose, he could lose his franchise for that. I think that's part of. I think the NFL should make sure that a black investor group or investor singular gets to buy a team. I think that's going to go a long way towards proving that they're serious about it. But they got to get backed into a corner to do the right thing. And yes, Jeff, you're right. It is part of the problem that the Steelers seem to be one of the very few franchises doing the right thing. But I am hopeful. I do see change. I'm 52 years old, and I remember rooting for Doug Williams in the Super Bowl because no black quarterback had ever been permitted the opportunity to win a Super Bowl before. So if we could see that happen, now we're at the final frontier of that. So I do think that the group of the NFL as a whole is slowly, reluctantly, but inexorably changing.
And that leads to something you wrote a piece a few months ago, interviewing a lot of the black men's basketball coaches in the NCAA about diversity, hiring, and retention. When you did that story and talked to those coaches, what were the biggest takeaways that you had from the discussions?
Man, that's a discouraged group, because they just see time and time again getting passed over for jobs that they should be able to compete for. And again, I want to be very clear. And I'm trying, this is not a divisive statement. This is not a prejudice statement against all the white coaches out there who get these jobs. I'm not saying, and these black coaches are not saying, these white guys don't deserve these jobs. But what is very, very clear is that a lot of white coaches get jobs with qualifications that would not even get a black coach an interview, So if you are a coach of any ethnic background and you may not have played in college basketball or pro ball. You may not have even won a whole lot of games, consistently. But, maybe you're a hell of a good coach and you deserve a shot depending on these qualities that you have and you bring to the table. A black coach has to be a former pro or have the stamp of approval from some legendary other older coach in order to get his toe in the door. And so we just want that, those black coaches. And this is the sense that I got talking to them. Just give us a fair shot, man. Just let me get an interview here. Just, consider me the same way you consider these other guys. Take all the nepotism out of it. Take all the family ties. There's a presumption of competence that white men have. It's unconscious, it's part of human nature, but they're presumed to be competent when they walk in the door. And we are not always considered to be that, and so that was the sense that I got in talking to them. They were cautiously optimistic about this most recent hiring cycle because almost half of the jobs, or roughly maybe a little bit more than half of the jobs, went to black coaches. But that was a clear reaction to George Floyd, and so when that dust settles down a couple years from now, will these coaches be given the same amount of time to succeed as their white colleagues? We'll see. That's what the coaches were telling me.
So how do you solve that problem? I mean, I'm a Michigan guy, and so obviously Juwan Howard is my guy. But in the meantime, for the last few weeks, we've had Phil Martelli, and Phil Martelli has been going out of his way to talk about his assistant coaches, the guys that are the X's and O's guys, and pumping them up. I get the impression that those assistant coaches may not have otherwise gotten an opportunity in this next coaching cycle without support from the coaches, the people that are the athletic directors, things like that. That's the way that we need to get around this, is to start having people that are in authority giving those other people the opportunity.
Yes. So one of the things that all the coaches told me, and I agree with, is that part of solving this problem is getting more diversity in administrative positions at the AD level, getting more minority-led search firms. I was surprised to learn how many coaching searches are conducted not by the university, but by a firm that they hire. So let's get diversity in that area as well. And so, I try to look at it like there's this not, oh, you owe us, or it's not filling a quota, but there's just this huge untapped reservoir of talent. And if you are a university looking for someone to lead your team, make sure that you're not overlooking this talent because your network does not really extend to them. I was also surprised to learn that a lot of coaching hires happen in a week, from we got to hire someone to ink on the contract. And when you're under pressure to hire that fast, you go down the traditional path. You go with people you go with the quote unquote name brands. I had a conversation earlier today with a former player who from long ago, from a big time university, and that big time university has an interim coach. And he was mentioning how all of the names that the university is putting forward, and they're in the Big Ten. So all the names that are getting put forward are these same old recycled retread guys. You're overlooking a lot of talent that could elevate you if you don't consider everybody that's out there. So that's what I think is going on.
We've talked to you in the past about your incredible book that we both enjoyed with John Thompson. One of his former student athletes, Patrick Ewing, is running a program as a coach at Georgetown. Seems like he's had a little bit of pressure this year. I've seen him fire back a little bit. What do you think about what's going on there? And is he getting the support that he needs to succeed, like we talk about these other coaches need at their own universities?
Oh, my Lord. Ooh, this is a really painful one for me. And I'm not even really, part of the program like these guys. But, let's keep it real, man. It's a disaster over there right now. Probably, they play Seton Hall, I think tomorrow in the first round of the Big East tournament, and barring a very highly miraculous, unexpected result, Georgetown will go winless in the Big East this season. They haven't won a game since December. So, let's call it what it is, man. We can't sugarcoat it. It's an absolute disaster. A lot of people are calling it the worst season in Georgetown history, although the year before John Thompson was hired, they only won 3 games. So I'm sticking with that as the worst season. I think he is getting, I can't imagine that Georgetown would not support him. And I don't know the ins and outs of how that works, but I do know the president of the university, Jack DeGioia. I got to know him on a personal level while doing the book. He loves Patrick. I can't imagine him not supporting him. The athletic director over there, Lee Reed, who is Black, can't imagine him not supporting him. They want him to succeed. That would be the best story ever in Georgetown history if Patrick Ewing came back and took them to, back to the tournament, deep tournament runs, Final Four. That would be tremendous. So I don't think it's the support. I don't know what it is. I don't know why the season has gone so poorly, other than this. And a lot of people don't like to talk about this, but there's other things in the news right now. There's some LSU news in a headline today about the notices of allegations. So LSU's coach, Will Wade, is still coaching 5 years after being recorded on a federal wiretap talking about paying for recruits. Georgetown does not pay for players. So everyone's talking about why Georgetown can't recruit the DMV, why Georgetown local guys are leaving. Well, one reason is that they can go elsewhere and get the bag. Let's keep it 100. Let's be honest. Georgetown does not pay players to get there. I think it's evident from these notices of allegations. And right now you've got NC State, Arizona, Kansas, Louisville, and LSU all formally under investigation for giving players money. And so if you've got those 5 under investigation, how many other Power Fives out there are, doing the same thing, but not Georgetown.
But it shouldn't, that wasn't the point of the NIL rules to kind of level the playing field? Shouldn't Georgetown have enough cachet that if everybody's following the new rules, now granted the rules haven't exactly been figured out yet, but if the rules go the way that we all hope that they're going to go, shouldn't that level the playing field so that you don't have the haves and the have-nots based on who's following the rules and who's not?
Maybe, but the one thing is that Georgetown doesn't have the cachet right now. Georgetown is struggling up from the bottom. And so, they did win the Big East tournament last year and go to the NCAAs, but it's tough to, the exposure on that program is not at a high level right now. So unless the athlete is bringing their audience with them, the way I understand it, a lot of NIL, if you're not at an Alabama football, and football is where most of the NIL is, but if you're not at a big time football school or you're not Zion Williamson, most of your, or at Duke basketball or something, most of the opportunity to earn NIL comes from the own social media following that you bring to the school with you. So a lot of these kids, these high school phenoms in this age that we live in, got 100, 200, 500,000 Instagram followers, and they can monetize that through NIL at their school. So I don't think that Georgetown is going to be able to really pay these kids, the way with NIL, the way, say, for example, Louisville allegedly and documentedly, is that a word, paid Brian Bowen $100K, Adidas / Louisville, So that $100,000 payment isn't really right there. That $200,000, $150,000 payment that kids, it's on record, it's getting paid to go to some of these schools. Georgetown's not doing that. So that's a competitive disadvantage. So I think Pat's getting the support that he needs, but he's got a big hill to climb. He has another year to do it. The university has come out and said that he'll be back next year. So I'm really hoping that he can have a successful season and get a renewal of his contract next year.
I wanted to ask you about the flip side. We've asked a lot about the challenges. Part of the reason I like your site is you look for the positive in stories too. You have a piece by Sean Hurd there about the Black women coaches, the connection to Dawn Staley. In 2015, she got a piece of the championship net from Carolyn Peck. Tell us how she decided to pay it forward and what this is like for these women who, there's only 21% of the head coaches identify as Black in women's basketball, and she's out there making sure that those women are all now connected.
Yeah. Another thing that I learned that I was told while doing that story on Black coaches in college basketball, I talked to coaches on the women's side, and Black women said, yeah, so in addition to us, a lot of Black men get the jobs that we're after too. They didn't say it in a bad way or in a negative way, but just noting that Black women are the minority amongst the minority. So shout to my colleague, Sean Hurd, who does as good a job as anybody in the country of covering women's basketball. I mean, he's phenomenal. I love women's basketball. They're amazing athletes. And I love reading Sean's coverage. And so he did a piece that explained how when Carolyn Peck won the chip, she gave a piece of the net after they cut it down to other Black women coaches. And so when Dawn Staley won it, she sent a piece of the net to every Black coach in women's basketball. Every Black woman has a piece of that. And it was really moving to hear what that meant to them. And it's also really like the sharing aspect of Dawn Staley and her effort to uplift others just really touched my heart. And then, Sean had another piece recently about how unusual it is for all of these coaches. We mentioned earlier in the context of the NFL, but really in any sport, they talk about all the time, your coaching tree, who you played for, who you coached under. And that's unusual for Black women to play under a Black woman coach. So there was this article about that. I'm not embarrassed to say there were some Black women coaches' names in there that I had not heard before. I know Coach Vivian Stringer. I know who Coach Carolyn Peck is. I had never heard of Marion Washington, who coached for 31 seasons at Kansas, and so this was some of the amazing ways that Coach Dawn Staley is uplifting folks who need support, who don't compete on a level playing field, with pieces of her championship net as she was uplifted by Carolyn Peck.
You mentioned Vivian Stringer. How important do you think she has been to female coaching and to Black women coaching? And Jason, you should smile. Jason doesn't get many shout outs for Rutgers right now. So I had to bring it up. She is so important to the game, just as Dawn Staley is, as somebody as especially who played here in Philadelphia for a while too. But how important are those two women to making sure that diversity happens?
Man, I mean, Vivian Stringer is an absolute legend, and she's still, she's still at the top of her profession. Nobody wants to see Rutgers in the NCAA's. I mean, they are tough. I was rooting for them so hard. And so it's just, it's sort of to me like, Coach John Thompson came along on the men's side and broke these barriers. And then, but as we've discussed a lot on this show and in other places, that next generation of Black coaches has had a hard time of really being successful and getting a foothold. Kevin Ollie won a national championship and then got, fired for stuff that was a lot more minor than anything that Will Wade has been documented as doing. So to see Coach Stringer still coaching and then Dawn Staley doing what she's doing, to me, it's like the women's game has surpassed the men's in terms of the success of Black coaches and the opportunities afforded to Black coaches. And I love to see it. So, Vivian Stringer is not as well known as she should be, but everybody's got to really respect and admire what she's accomplished.
I want to close with what must have been a proud dad moment. I love your Twitter feed. You posted a picture of a hug between you and your son after the game on senior night, I believe. What was that experience like for you to see your son culminate his career? I've been watching you retweet the highlights of him during the games. What's that like for you?
Man, thank you for asking, number one. So to all my fellow sports parents out there, the moms and dads who watch our kids play at any level, it's tough. It's a really difficult emotional experience. And it's hard for us to do the right thing and behave ourselves. And our emotions are so tied up in it. So I really put a lot of effort into being, looking for the positive aspects of sports and not letting the chase for success and attention and highlights and all that kind of stuff detract us from the positive things that sports can bring. It's, sports can teach us so much about ourselves. It can elevate our character. It can create unity and achievement and excellence. And that's the reason why we can pour so much of our energy and attention into it. So my son, Coltrane Washington, is a senior at Drexel University, and he has had a long, hard road to becoming a regular starter. But he started the last, 17, 18 games of his senior year and played well and did his thing. Had some ups and downs, good games and bad games. So senior night, they're playing Charleston, and Charleston's winning the whole game. Charleston's a tough squad. And then they scrap back, and my son gets fouled. They're down 3 with 14 seconds left. My son gets fouled, 1-on-1, hits both. Drexel down 1, commits the foul. They miss the free throw, come down, play to the big fella for the dunk and the win. They win 80-79. It was with 1 second left, that dunk. It was the only lead they had all game. And so I did have a big hug with my son after the game because I know what it took for him to get to that point. And it was not everybody, in the youth sports community and a lot of us parents, we set out D1 as this sort of promised land, this nirvana. Oh, I want to go D1. Yeah. Is he D1? Is he not D1? And the reality of Division I sports is different than the perception of it and the idealization of it. And my son has lived that. He had to really find out a lot about himself. He had to overcome a lot of obstacles. He had to make a lot of mistakes. He had to become a better person and a better human being and a better man in order to be in a position to help his team win that game. And so that's really what the hug represented. I wasn't hugging him because he won. I was really proud of him, how his character was able to improve and withstand everything that he had to go through to get to that point. He does have one more season left to play. COVID year, baby. So, we'll see how it goes. He hasn't scored his last bucket. Shout to my boy, Coltrane Washington. Yes, sir.
So you mentioned something that I think is really important is that sports isn't necessarily about the D1. It's not about the winning a lot of times, and it's not about them becoming pros because most of them don't. It's about growth. And I mean, how important has it been for you to see the growth in your son over these 4 years?
That's what you hope for, but it's incredibly painful because growth comes from falling down. Growth comes from making mistakes. Growth comes from tough situations. If we're never tested, if we're never face any obstacles, then we don't get a chance to elevate ourselves and become better. But those obstacles, man, as a parent, anybody who's a parent or has, loved ones within their family and you watch them go through something, it's one of the toughest things that you can experience. And so it was tremendously important for my son to be confronted with his weaknesses, and the instinct as a parent is to try to jump in and solve the problem for your kid. Another thing, if there's any parents of any type of athletes out there, I would really encourage you to leave as much distance between your children's coaches and you as possible. It's hard to do. There was a lot of times when I wanted to get at, my children's coaches and various teams, but I really resolved to just stay back and let your child figure out how to get through that situation. And so really, I'm really proud of my son as a basketball player, man. He's tough. And people like to talk about, me beating Twitter trolls on the internet, but he's killing his old man all day, every day. But I'm definitely much more proud and happy about who he is as a person and how basketball has helped him to get to that point. And that's really what sports is all about. That's why we're sitting here talking, because John Thompson was all about that, and understanding the real purpose of sports in our lives is not attention or money or fame. And that's why I like you guys' show, because you guys really resonate with that.
And that's why we do this show, and we love having you on a guest, because we can have these conversations and talk about the lessons that come about off the court just as much as we can the changes that need to be made on the court. Jesse, regardless of what name you brand yourself and whether you figure out who you're working for these days, we always appreciate the time with you, man. We can't thank you enough. You take care of yourself, and good luck to your son.
Jason, thank you. Jeff, thank you. Love you guys. I'll see you soon.